This is WEFT Champaign, 90.1 FM, community radio for East Central Illinois. Streaming live at www.weft.org. The views and opinions expressed here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent those of WFT, its board of directors, associates, its station manager, or Prairie Air Incorporated. The following program is pre-recorded and consists of two parts. The first part is a rebroadcast of a program first aired in 2011. The second part was recorded on March 6th, 2016. Welcome to Weekend Heartbeat. I'm Sean David, and this is a new lamp.
New lamp for old. New lamp for old. Remember how Aladdin headed out to get oil for his mother's old dented, tarnished lamp? And in the market he met a magician calling out these words. This strange man was offering to give him a brand new shiny lamp for his old one. That's what I want to offer you, if you'll have it. A new lamp of spiritual guidance. But maybe you already have such a lamp, which still burns brightly. Great. You are still welcome to join us simply to learn who we are. But maybe your lamp of divine guidance has gotten dented and tarnished like Aladdin's. Or perhaps you have no such lamp at all. To you, I offer a new lamp. Hi, my name is Marilyn. Welcome to A New Lamp, a program designed to make you acquainted with the Baha'i religious faith. I hope you will choose to spend the next few minutes with me. Thanks.
Oh my Lord, I am a child of tender years. Nourish me from the breast of thy mercy. Train me in the bosom of thy love. Educate me in the school of thy guidance, and develop me under the shadow of thy bounty. Deliver me from darkness, make me a brilliant light. Free me from unhappiness, make me a flower of the rose garden. Suffer me to become a servant of thy threshold, and confer upon me the disposition and nature of the righteous. Make me a cause of bounty to the human world, and crown my head with the diadem of eternal life. Verily, thou art the powerful, the mighty, the seer. hearer, the powerful.
There are many things that we in the U.S. take for granted. Education is one of these things. There are yet throughout the world many areas where the children go uneducated and in this condition can be led as lambs into the depths of human degradation. Baha'u'llah makes it mandatory that all children be educated. All should learn arts, crafts, sciences, and all those things which will help them become the best they can be in order to be able to meet their physical requirements and to uplift the state of humankind. With all this worldly education, they must also be spiritually educated. Knowledge without wisdom that comes from God is dangerous indeed. Better an uneducated man who loves God than the genius who uses his knowledge for his own greed, fame, fortune, and power. Baha'u'llah emphasizes the need for girls particularly to be educated, for they are the first teachers of the children. This means you, mother, not grandma, the babysitter, or daycare. Grandma has already done her child rearing, which requires the energy of youth to keep up with small children. Do not have children if you don't intend to dedicate those several years to being with them. Career will be waiting for you when the little ones no longer need you. With today's lifespan, there's time for both. Trying to multitask mothering and career usually produces poor results, which has become more and more obvious in today's society. Obviously, I'm not talking to that mother who must raise and financially support her children alone. God help her.
I have found Baha'u'llah in the early days of my life. He is in my heart now and forever. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, now and forever. I have found Baha'u'llah in the early days of my life. He is in my heart now and forever. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, now and forever.
Many fathers today are becoming more sensitive to the fact that the mother's day-to-day task of child care becomes very tiring and are developing closer relationships with young children. But dad's role becomes more important as the little ones become adolescents. Often during these years, the older children need the type of discipline that requires tough love. Fathers have so much to teach their children during these years about being a man or woman of virtuous character, trustworthy, God-fearing. And of course, our children learn the most by observing us. But we need to be there so they can do just that. Baha'u'llah gives to the fathers the responsibility of seeing that the children receive all the schooling they need to nurture them to their fullest. But even more importantly, the father is to provide spiritual education. Here again, example is the best teacher. If children see both parents studying the sacred writings, it will become natural to the entire family to follow suit. We might do all sorts of interesting or important things with our life, but none will be more important than raising an educated, spiritual family. I believe it was Winston Churchill said, "The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world."
All the stars set on the hill, all the pages read, and all of God's children tucked in bed with a light upon their head. birds are in their nest, everything is said, and all of God's children tucked in bed with a light upon their head. All the rivers in the land are curling round, to every county moonbeams dancing over ground, too many for counting. Flounder in the tide, all the babies fed, and all of God's children tucked in bed with a light upon their head. All the stars set on the hill, all the pages read, all of God's children tucked in bed with a light upon their
The education and training of children is among the most meritorious acts of humankind and draweth down the grace and favor of the All-Merciful. For education is the indispensable foundation of all human excellence, and alloweth man to work his way to the heights of abiding glory. If a child be trained from his infancy, he will, through the loving care of the Holy Gardener, drink in the crystal waters of the Spirit and of knowledge, like a young tree amid the rilling brooks. And certainly he will gather to himself the bright rays of the sun of truth, and through its light and heat will grow ever fresh and fair in the garden of life. Abdu'l-Baha. Thanks so much for being with me this morning. I hope you have found a blessing during these few minutes. If you want to learn more about the Baha'i religion, you can go online to www.bahai.us. To contact me, my email address is anewlamp@yahoo.com. Thanks, and have a great day.
Please consider supporting the programming you love. WEFT will gladly accept that vehicle you've been looking to get rid of. Our vehicle donation program provides an effortless option to support WEFT community radio. You can give cars, charitable, adult, rides, and services a call at 1-855-500-RIDE or fill out the secure donation form at careeasy.org. That's one word, careeasy.org. Just remember to designate WEFT as the nonprofit beneficiary of your gift. WEFT truly appreciates supporters like you. Programming at WEFT is brought to you in part by Common Ground Food Co-op. Food that nourishes you and gives back to your community may be found at Common Ground Food Co-op, located in Lincoln Square Mall. Your dollar stays local when you shop Co-op, cultivating community and local food since 1974.
Welcome to NewLamp. Our guests for today are DonnaK and SueO, Baha'is from the area, and they're a couple of busy ladies with some interesting work as well as hobbies. Hi, Donna and Sue.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Donna. Say hi, Sue.
Okay, ladies, we like to hear something about who our visitors actually are. So, Donna, would you start? Just tell us a little bit about yourself, besides the fact that you love horses. Oh, you love horses.
I do love horses.
One thing I know is that you and I started out living about 16 miles apart up in northern Illinois. But you go ahead and tell us something about who you are.
I hail from Peru, Illinois. The high school there is La Salle, Peru. I was raised in the Catholic faith. I went to parochial school. I have been steeped in thinking about global issues, in thinking about poverty. I am deeply grateful that I was raised in the sight of God. So much of my early training was with Jesus Christ.
As was mine. Sue, let's hear about you.
I'm actually originally from Los Angeles.
Really?
And my family background's Episcopalian.
Okay.
When I was christened as a child, the minister said something about children who aren't christened are going to hell, and my dad had a big argument with the minister about that, and so we didn't go to church after that.
Oh, dear.
And my dad said all children are blessed by God, and God would never do that to children that aren't Christian. And so I was raised to love and respect God and the Word of God, but I wasn't raised in a church. So it helped me to find the faith, I think, because I was already thinking in very universal terms about
Yes.
spirituality and respecting all religions.
Okay. So how did you happen to find the faith? Sue?
It was actually through the music of Seals and Crofts. When I was a teenager, I heard them interviewed on TV, and they talked about the principles of the faith, and it made a lot of sense to me. And then I went to college, and I attended my first fireside and learned about the faith, and so I've been a Baha'i since I was 18.
Oh, that's
So-
wonderful. Yeah, it's amazing what these folks who are in the arts, how they influence others, isn't it? And Seals and Croft definitely did that during their era. And Donna, I know you have an interesting story that includes Sue about how you found the faith.
I think it's kind of interesting. I have always felt that Yahweh or the Christian God or Allah must have been the same being. And Sue and I worked together, and I was at work one day, and someone said something rather bigoted about either Jews or Muslims. So I became angry, and I marched into Sue's office, and I said, when are people going to learn that Yahweh and the Christian God and Allah are the same being? And she stayed very calm, and she laughed, and she said, I have a book for you to read. It was entitled Thief in the Night by William Sears, and in that he delineates many of the Christian Bible writings that foretell the coming of Baha'u'llah. It was very interesting, very enlightening.
Mm-hmm.
You were a Baha'i for a long time. You just didn't know it.
Yes, I had basic beliefs that were conducive.
Yes, I think that's often very true of people coming into the faith, that somehow or other we have picked up these ideas on our own. We didn't have a focus to put them in. So that's great. Well, we four people have similar things about our working background that I think is going to produce a very interesting conversation today. You ladies both work in the VA hospital, and I was a nurse, hospital and nursing home, and Sean is a veteran. and was a medic.
So yeah, the weird little overlap here.
Yes, so a little touch of these four areas hitting together. So who would like to start? You ladies, we want to hear about your work. How does the Baha'i faith influence your work?
When I was about 18 or 19, I could have gone into horse racing. I have relatives in the business.
Really?
I did a visit. I looked around and I realized I could be happy doing this, but I also realized that's kind of self-oriented. And I started thinking about ways in which I could help other people, and that is when I became more interested in the counseling profession.
Very good.
Alcoholics and addicts are often a stereotyped population. Many people don't want anything to do with them. So we are doing as Jesus said, we're doing as Baha'u'llah said. It's spirit of service. It's spending time with, perhaps Jesus would put it, the least of my brethren.
I was thinking that same phrase.
Yes. That's why I like what I do.
I think I really like what I do because I've always been less judgmental. I've always thought it was really important to see each person as an individual striving to be a better person. And in the Baha'i writings, it says we're all created from the same dust, so that one wouldn't ever hold himself up higher than another. So it really helps me to see people with alcohol or drug problems or with other issues as just striving to be a better person, the same as you or I. And I really like working with this population because there are people who have identified that there's an issue for them to work on. Whereas a lot of us have issues, but we don't really recognize them. And so we just let it go, But these are people who really are focused and trying hard to make their lives better.
So among the people, you are both working with the addicts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
not just the general population of the VA.
Yeah, we work in the substance abuse rehab program, and our focus is on rational motive behavior therapy, which is about looking at the way we think about things and changing our thoughts to be more productive and think about our long-term goals, that our behavior will be such that it helps us achieve our long-term goals. And that works really well with substance abuse because obviously if you go drink, then you're not going to go to work, right?
Right.
So hopefully, you'll think long-term goal and you'll go to work instead of going to the bar. And, it's just about changing your thoughts, changing your behavior.
And looking for a different outcome.
Yeah. And my specialty is teaching anger management, which is really interesting working in the veteran population because the demands for fairness because of all they've been through in their lives and looking at how those demands for fairness can get them into trouble and to have them be able to be more forgiving of themselves and other people really helps with anger management, and it helps them stay clean and sober.
That's good. Some of these things are hard for all of us, let alone if you've got an addiction like that.
Yeah.
And, if we can think of these things as an illness and not something the person really wants to be. Nobody really wants to be an addict, I don't think.
We could have used some of that help on active duty. I mean, that's one of the, I guess nobody tends to volunteer for that assistance when they're sort of surrounded by their brothers, But I knew a lot of people who the description you just made up on active duty who could have used that kind of help. Yeah. It's a very stressful job.
Addiction is definitely spiritual malady, but it's we all have some spiritual malady, things that we're trying to work out. So certainly I am not elevated above they, and just as in the Baha'i faith or in the Christian faith, we don't want to elevate ourselves over other people, nor are we less.
Yeah.
And some veterans struggle with that. They think they are less. And
Yes.
when I'm interviewing, when I'm assessing, I'm constantly on guard for that. Is this veteran blaming himself? Is he blaming others? Is he doing both, he or she? And I'm looking for that, and I'm trying to help them with that spiritual malady so that they can get on with a more productive life.
I noticed during my years working in hospitals and nursing homes that some of these folks have a double problem if the staff don't understand. There seems to me like there have always been a few staff members who look down on these people, who let them know that what they thought of them. And, you know, so that's such a bad attitude for anybody in the medical or social service areas to have, that, you know, they're there because they need you. And you're there to not be judgmental. So it's really hard if there are staff people who are that way.
Our supervisor likes to say that a few of the veterans are hard to like. They are. A few are hard to like. A few are extremely easy to like. But what I try to remember spiritually is that loving them all is my spiritual obligation. And there's usually something redeeming that you can find if you continue to look.
The unlovable person is the one that needs that the most.
That's probably true.
Also, because of the Baha'i teachings, we accept, respect all religious faiths. When we have veterans that are of the Muslim faith or Buddhist or follow Native American beliefs, they appreciate our openness, acceptance, and respect of their beliefs when we work with them. So it's helpful.
That's great. I'm sure it would be.
Yeah, it's been tough for some of the Muslim veterans. It really has. So, yeah.
Yeah, and right now is such a hard time for Muslims in this country. Just kind of fingers are pointed at all of them as being the bad guys.
And here they've served their country. Many of them serve their country overseas.
Yes.
And so it's really important to be appreciative and respectful of their beliefs, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was always a challenge. In overseas, it was always a challenge that we had Muslim soldiers in our ranks, and yet it always seemed like, to me, it seemed like the chaplains were more interested in trying to persuade them to change their beliefs than to honor their belief, which is a direct contradiction of what the chaplain's role is supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, but...
Sure.
And things have really changed for the better. I mean, one of the chaplains at the VA found a Quran and gave it to one of our veterans, which I thought was really thoughtful.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that was good.
Now, you guys were talking up a storm the other evening. I know you've got things to say.
Well,
So
one of the things,
you all
too,
say
is
them.
Baha'is don't drink and we don't abuse drugs. And so also that's helpful in your profession if you're a substance abuse rehab therapist, because we're talking with people about how can you cope with stress in your life without the stress reliever of going to have a beer or go drink or go use, and how can you have a social life without drinking and using. And actually we have a social life that involves people who are clean and sober.
Yes.
And so we can actually give them examples of ways we enjoy our lives without using and drinking. So I feel like it's helpful to them to know that we're doing the same thing that we're asking them to do, you know?
Right.
Yeah, like in active duty, that was one of the things. I didn't drink, and so that put me on the outs, but only to the extent that I put myself on the outs, because if you still spend time, if you still go out with the guys, and, you know, of course, you sort of automatically become the designated driver, you know, which is always a service, but then you can still wind up having the bonds of friendship, even though you're not actually participating in it. But it is an obstacle. That's one of the reasons why I'm sure why the substance abuse becomes so high, is because it is kind of a rite of passage in order to get in with the group. I knew many soldiers who had so much trouble fitting in with the group and found the only way that they could, because of social awkwardness, was to go out and drink with them. That seemed to be the shortcut, the social lubricant. And for guys like me who didn't want to drink, we had to kind of actively act like the life of the party. Even I know for me, I had to go beyond my comfort zone to become a little wilder than I might want to be in order to be accepted by the group.
Yeah.
Go along with a little more than I might have normally gone along with, as long as it wasn't causing any permanent harm, just to be able to show that I'm willing to
Be one of the guys.
to be one of the guys.
Not being judgmental.
Share the risk.
The other thing we see with our veterans a lot is rough childhoods. We see that very frequently. And then the military experience on top of that, often. There's a double indemnity as far as their trust issues, their ability to bond with other people. And a lot of them are cynical. And even though they've taken a lot of risks in a military sense, they are not willing to take risks as far as being close to other people, trusting other people, really letting go and letting out love. You see a lot of the veterans really struggling with that. And when you urge them, a lot of times they don't want to take that kind of risk.
And it's such a privilege when they open up to you and share their lives and their wounds and allow themselves to be vulnerable and trust you. It's really an amazing part of the job, and it's something I will always treasure,
I'm sure it takes a while to build up to that point.
Yeah.
Yes. But Sue's right. The highest, best three words you ever hear come out of a veteran is, I trust you.
I can believe that.
I mean, I feel like my work really moves my heart. I could be doing something making more money. I could have chosen another degree that would have given me more income. But there's a lot more fulfillment in what I'm doing. I really feel like I'm touching souls. I really feel like there is great potential for them to be better parents, better workers, better able to connect up with other people. And I feel like most of them probably will find spirituality someday. There is some research that says around the third year in sobriety, people reach kind of a spiritual crisis. They begin to ask spiritual questions. They start to crave more spiritual reconnection. It's almost like the sobriety is kind of a preliminary for all that to happen.
Yeah, and the program where we work, it isn't a 12-step program. It's really based on dealing with coping skills and helping people think differently about how to deal with the stress in their life. But we really urge them to have a spiritual connection in their community to help them, like a recovery network. And that's where 12-step is really wonderful, because they can go to meetings, they can go to have a sponsor, they can go to churches and connect with a recovery group at their church or their synagogue or even at the mosque. They can, and it's really good for them to be able to find a connection in the community, a spiritual connection that can help them deal with the loneliness when you make a lifestyle change. All of a sudden you're trying to figure out who you can hang with now, who can be your friend, who could you call at 2 o'clock in the morning, because it can't be the old people that you were using and drinking with,
Right.
Many of the veterans struggle with self-forgiveness. When you think about the things that they've had to do, or the things that they've seen, or the level of brutality and violence that they've seen, there's trouble with cynicism, there's trouble with what might be within. Many of them have fear of their own anger because they could really hurt somebody if they became very angry. So dealing with those kind of things is very difficult for the veterans. And for some of them, their own faith is quite the asset. And we are trained to work within what's called a patient's preferred defense structure. And many times I find myself using their spiritual faith as a tool for their emotional healing. though I have to be careful at that time to stay within that person's spiritual outlooks.
Yes.
We do have chaplain service to help with that. But many times for some of the veterans, that will flow very naturally, where they're talking about self-concept or they're talking about family life, and they go into spirituality really on their own. And I think that my faith background, both the Christian and the Baha'i, makes me very comfortable when my veteran is ready to shift that gear.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some who just kind of never reached that point, who are just not interested in the spiritual side of life? And I would think that'd be pretty discouraging to work with people like that.
Well, not really. I mean, you could understand that there are some combat veterans, especially, who have decided that that God doesn't exist because of all they've seen, the horror they've experienced, the trauma, and you can work with them. I mean, it's fine. It's really fine. That's the thing about not being judgmental and not challenging their understanding, their spiritual understanding, even if it's that they're an atheist, because we're there to be supportive of them and to help them learn how to take better care of themselves.
Right.
We're not there to challenge their worldview in that way, you know. And who am I to say, after they've been through that kind of trauma, well, you should believe in God? I can't say that to them. I don't know what it's been like to be them, and that's between them and their Maker.
We really can't say that to anybody.
No,
actually.
no,
Yeah, our relationship with God is so personal and private.
Exactly.
For every individual, and changes.
Yeah.
Evolves over time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, invariably, when you ask a veteran, how do you do the things you did? He says, my training. And I was thinking when Sue was talking, it really is the training. I am so used to staying within a patient's preferred defense structure that spills over to the spirituality too. And the other place where the training comes in is, not only do you not take the veteran to spirituality if the veteran does not want to go there, it is also a thing of
letting them set the timetable and the focus and the subject matter,
And our training also dictates that we do not give advice. We do not tell things directly. My job is to artfully try to help veteran get there by him or herself.
yes.
And many times we're having a conversation where I'm not asking questions. In good counseling, you don't ask a lot of questions. You do a lot of reflective listening. And all of a sudden, something will come out of him or her that makes you both go, whoa, what was that? And they really need to come to the conclusion themselves. And even when they're in that spiritual realm, that's usually how it goes. Suddenly, there's a new realization. And both of you are kind of like, wow, that was fun. That was beautiful, especially when it is of the spiritual realm.
Yes. All that is neat. So, just out of curiosity, now we've heard so much about the problems with VA hospitals and the money and lack of doctors and can't get them in. Does this affect your work?
Well, actually, for our program, I really can only talk about our program.
Yeah.
But for our program, we're set up in a way that we can really take whoever wants to start our program the day they walk in and talk to the coordinator of our program. We can start them in the substance abuse rehab program. They go through an assessment, and then they're given a case manager, and then we work with them and set up a schedule. There's really, for our purposes of our outpatient intensive substance abuse program, there's no wait, which we're really grateful for, because when someone comes into treatment and they want to help with substance abuse issues, you really can't say wait a week. that
Right.
doesn't work for them.
Now
It's
is when you
now.
need
Now
it.
is the time. Yeah, they're ready now. So.
Absolutely. So basically, your patients are primarily outpatients.
They're outpatient. Yeah, the only catch can be sometimes is getting housing, and so sometimes finding them a place in the community or getting a bed on station can be difficult. So we work with different options to do that.
Sean, when you were out in the field as a medic, now these ladies were talking about how the effect of being out there under fire affected them, their spiritual impact. What can you say about it? You were from the medic side, and I know you
Right.
have to have seen some really awful things.
Yeah, not as awful as many. I was pretty lucky. The team before us actually had one of the last of the big attacks of our time in the theater. This was a weapon, an IED, a roadside bomb that was specifically engineered to be able to destroy our most armored weapon, our most armored vehicles. And so, we got hit by IEDs, explosives, all the
Okay.
time, but it was just loud bomb and smoke and maybe a little scratched paint, and then everybody's fine. And in this case, it actually killed a couple of their people. And this was right near the end of the deployment. And again, this didn't happen to our group, but this happened to the group that we replaced. And to me, that was probably the most poignant thing there, was talking to their medic who had to deal with that, who was on site at the time, and him telling me
Yes.
that whole story. Because it's, there, but for the grace of God go I. But I had just
Yes.
gotten there, so we didn't know if it was going to happen to us or not. But this was a young man who was obviously going to be going home with a lot of, his entire unit was going to be going home
Oh, really?
with a lot of difficulty, because they'd made it in a 1-year deployment. They'd made it through like almost 11 months of their 12-month deployment with no casualties, no problems. And then just before they go home,
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
it
isn't
was really, really heartbreaking. And, I had a loss of words. I just got there. And what can you do or say when you're confronted with that? For myself, we were hit by shells. I worked in the hospital, and there were people there who had been in accidents or who had been injured by wartime activity. But for the most part, I wasn't directly affected. I wasn't directly attacked. The only enemy combatants that I actually ran into were guys that needed medical care because they'd been chased down in the desert by some of our CID guys, the military police, and they were really, really friendly. And so the CID guys had to remind me, these are the enemy. Don't get too casual. It's like, but they're such nice guys.
You sound like a program on MASH.
Yeah, it was. It was very much like that. But this was the day-to-day stresses. A lot of the, again, and MASH is such a good example of this, because so much of the military bureaucracy in any kind of a unit, but especially in a medical unit, winds up mirroring what you see in that show. The show is an exaggeration, obviously. It's an extreme comedic exaggeration. But there's always sort of, why are we doing this? Isn't
Yes.
this not safe? Or why aren't we doing it this other way when we talked about doing it that way, but now we're not going to do it that way? And all these ideas and decisions are being made way above your level, and you don't know what's going on. And even though you yourself may not be in physical danger, you were always in physical danger, but you're not in immediate mortal peril. You're not getting shot at. You're not getting directly bombed.
Right.
But you feel so vulnerable because you're not sure the people whose responsibility it is to take care of you are actually doing their job. And that's terrifying. And so that's why a lot of the people that I ran into came back with a great deal of stress, was because of this feeling of not being taken care of not being safe.
And what happens with this is lots of times we'll work with the veterans who have issues with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They'll come into our program, they'll be clean and sober by the time they're done with our 6-week program, and then they'll transition into PTSD counseling, and they'll stay in the working with a PTSD therapist, a psychologist, for a long time. It's really helpful to them, but it's an important piece to get clean and sober before they start the PTSD therapy.
I would think, yes.
Yeah. But it's good. It's really good the way our 2 programs meshed to help a veteran, you know.
That's wonderful.
Going back to what Sean said, he sounds like such a typical veteran when he says, well, I didn't see much. Other people just had it so much worse than I do. And it's like, wow, that sounds like what we hear every day. Really, when we take a look at PTSD, what happens to these people is they're serving next to each other in these very violent and desperate situations, and they know that they're never alone, and they know that these other people have proven their mettle, and it creates a bond like none other. These are bonds that are maybe closer in a different way than spousal bonds. It's very, very compelling, and much PTSD deals in what I saw happen to my buddy, or what I saw happen to the people that live in that country. It is spiritual. It's very deep, and it's threatening as regard to their sobriety. There are veterans who will tell you, I know if I go back to alcohol and drugs, bad things are going to happen. But what has happened at times in the past is I would sell my soul to the devil for 2 hours of feeling numb. Now there, you've got some PTSD problems and a lot of other things to deal with. It's never just addiction.
Do you run across much in the way of potential suicidals? I would think.
Yeah, we do. There's a whole protocol for us for dealing with and evaluating on a pretty regular basis if a client is suicidal and how to help them. We do contracts with veterans in terms of suicidal ideation and who to call and how to take care of themselves. And really the big emphasis is always ask for help. There's a crisis line, a 24-hour crisis line that veterans can call anytime, so there's always help available to them.
Suicide is very scary for families and people that know that veteran. It's also very scary for the professional. Statistically speaking, many completers of suicide give no indication. I have also had veterans tell me very straight up, I know you ask me the suicide question every day. If I am ever suicidal, I am not going to tell you. It's a very scary realm.
Absolutely. We were taught that if somebody indicates that they're thinking about it, that's the person to watch.
Yes.
But that's just not necessarily so.
Yeah, and it can get so confusing. I had one soldier. I was in a unit in California that was assigned to the task of preparing soldiers for going overseas, and I was assigned to the medical clinic there. And this was the unit that we were processing had done multiple deployments. And a soldier came into my clinic and said, I'm thinking about killing myself. And he basically said it exactly like I just said it. Just straight up the bat. And I'm thinking about killing myself. And so I'm coming in, because I think he said I don't want to go on the deployment, but I just don't want to, but I'm going to kill myself. And I didn't know how to react. One thing I don't, medics have a little bit of training in this, but this guy was just so flat. His affect was so flat that I couldn't decide if he was just if he was trying to scam us, he'd be much more subtle. But if he were for real, wouldn't he be much more emotional? And so I didn't know what to do. So I ended up calling Arsara. I contacted his command, which I don't know. I contacted my command. They contacted his command. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if we should report him to his unit or not. I had no idea what to do. But they did, and they called, and the sergeant major came in. Apparently this kid had said this kind of stuff before, and the sergeant majors leaned into him, just started yelling at him and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, is this appropriate? is this what you're supposed to do? And I did not know what to do or say, and nobody else in the clinic really did either. So we're like, oh, don't worry about it, doc. We deal with this guy all the time. He's always like this. Like, isn't that a problem that he's always like this?
The flatness is probably clinical size depression. And so the flatness in ways is exactly what you would expect when someone comes in and says, I'm thinking about suicide. You might not see the strong emotion. You might see that real flat tone of voice, eyes that look like there's nothing behind them, or not really an emotional look on the face. That can actually be some very bad signs.
Yeah.
Sometimes, too, when people leave the military, they're leaving this structure that was really comfortable for them. Even though they had been in combat and they'd been through a lot of difficult times, still, they really liked the camaraderie. They liked the structure of military life. They go into civilian life and they'll feel really lost. And sometimes drinking, using is part of trying to fill that void when they've left the military. Yes. So if you get a combination of feeling hopeless, helpless, and worthless, it's really a setup for suicidal ideation. So it's really important in what we do to instill hope in people, to help people feel a sense of that we want to empower them, that they can make positive changes in their life, that they're not hopeless, they're not helpless, and of course they're not worthless,
Right.
2 weeks ago, a veteran asked me, why are you always complimenting me? I said, I don't compliment you. I make observations of you.
Do most of these people have good family support?
We really see a mixed bag. Some of them have very staunch wife, mother, brother, and some have really pulled back from other people. A few. Then there's another special subset. They will tell you, I will not let anyone get close to me. Then you start working with that veteran. You start working with their hurts, their depression, their lack of trust, PTSD, very strong lack of trust. Many of them, there's a long legacy. And what's important then is for me to never abandon him. A few of the veterans will act badly trying to get you to reject them. That is the last thing you want to do. You do not reject the veteran for acting badly.
Yes.
You can always find a quality that you love about someone. Always.
That's right. It takes a little looking sometimes. I know a lot of times when I would come onto a ward and I'd be told about such and such was a patient that was a problem patient, and to me, that was an immediate challenge. I think, okay, she thinks this is a problem patient, then he's got a problem that I've got to look for.
One of the good things about working with veterans, though, is, and Donna's touched on this, is the camaraderie. I mean, you feel it so strongly in the treatment center, that the way they try to help each other and the connection they feel with each other, it's really therapeutic.
The other thing to remember is everybody's got their own intelligence, and those veterans are so darn intelligent. So many of them can read people so well.
Really
and
well.
When we go into a group session, I love group session. When I'm in group session, I'm thinking, am I really getting paid to do this? It's a gas. So I was in group session a few weeks ago, and one of the veterans said something really profound and intelligent. And a different veteran looked at me and said, who's the teacher now? And I said, that's supposed to happen. We have so much wisdom in this room. And I said, and remember, when the veteran does say something that's very intelligent and very moving, it actually is a sign that the facilitator is doing a good job that hour.
Good for you. Oh, golly. Well, Sue and Donna, we are so glad that you've been with us today. Thanks so much for your insights as to working with the veterans, with their addictions and their post-traumatic stress problems that you work with every day. And we really appreciate your having come and shared with us.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So what we do at this part of the program is go into reading some of the writings from our faith. Would you two folks be willing to join us on that?
Sure.
Great.
Man reacheth perfection through good deeds, voluntarily performed, not through good deeds, the doing of which was forced upon him. And sharing is a personally chosen righteous act. That is, the rich should extend assistance to the poor. They should expend their substance for the poor, but of their own free will, and not because of the poor have gained this end by force. For the harvest of force is turmoil and ruin of the social order. On the other hand, voluntary sharing, the freely chosen expending of one's substance, leadeth to society's comfort and peace. It lighteth up the world. It bestoweth honor upon humankind. Abdul-Baha.
Excellence of my handiwork may be fully revealed unto men. Love is light, and whatsoever house it may shine. Love is light, and whatsoever house humanity's darkness. Whatsoever abode it may dwell, humanity's darkness. Whatsoever abode, I have perfected in every one of you, my creation, so that the excellence of my handiwork may be fully revealed unto me. Love is light, and whatsoever house it may shine. Love is light, and whatsoever house humanity's darkness. And whatsoever abode it may dwell, humanity's darkness. And whatsoever darkness, and whatsoever abode you may dwell, and enmity's darkness, and whatsoever abode, love is the light, love is the light.
The music on today's program were The Guardian and The Last Look by Grant Hinden Miller. To find out more about Baha'i events taking place in Champaign-Urbana, or if you'd like to listen to previous NewLamp programs, you can go online to www.cu-bahai.org. or if you would like to learn more about the Baha'i national and international community, go to www.bahai.us. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope you'll join us again next month. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this week's Weekend Heartbeat on WEFT Champaign 90.1 FM, Community Radio, Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, streaming live at www.weft.org.